imagine, like you're on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange,
Yeah.
but instead of all the chaos and the yelling, it's just rows and rows of servers humming away.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about today, algorithmic trading, where it's not so much about gut feelings and hunches. It's, well, algorithms.
It's amazing to think how much trading has changed, It used to be all about reading the room, trusting your instincts. Now it's about processing information like at lightning speed.
Yeah.
Faster than any human could ever hope to.
Yeah, yeah. It's like trading at warp speed.
Yeah.
And it really all boils down to efficiency, right?
That's healthcare.
Algorithms can spot a trend, maybe even before we've even had our coffee.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of trends, one of the strategies that a lot of these algorithms use is called momentum trading. Have you ever noticed how a stock that's going up just seems to keep going up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's well, that's exactly what these algorithms are designed to capitalize on.
Right.
Identifying those patterns and then making trades, executing trades with incredible speed and precision. Often it's, a series of microtransactions that add up, right?
Right.
To some pretty significant gains.
Okay, so algorithmic trading, already pretty wild, but we're going to take things to a whole other level. Imagine if you could give these algorithms, these trading algorithms, the ability to understand language, actually read the news, to analyze earnings calls, to even figure out the sentiment on social media. That's where custom LLMs come in.
Yeah, and these aren't your typical chatbots or anything. It's more like like a specialized AI like GPT-3, but instead of being trained on, the entire internet, these LLMs, they're trained laser focused, you could say, on the language of finance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. We're talking about annual reports, market news, regulatory filings, all that.
So it's not just about like crunching numbers. It's about picking up on the nuances of how people how people communicate.
Right, exactly.
Like maybe a CEO, right, getting a little squirrely when asked about a certain product line during an earnings call.
Oh, yeah.
Could that be like a sign of trouble?
Absolutely. Yeah, that subtle shift in tone, the choice of words, those are all data points that an LLM can pick up on. It's like having an AI analyst that can like read between the lines of every single financial document,
See, that's what I mean. That just seems like something straight out of science fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's happening now.
It is.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But, for those of us who aren't, day trading from our phones every day, why does any of this even matter?
Well, that's a good question. And it gets to how big of a deal this technology could really be. See, LLMs, they're not just reading reports, they're actually tapping into this whole other world of what we call alternative data to try and really understand the market.
Okay, alternative data, you're gonna have to break that down for me.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Let's start with something, a little more tangible. Imagine an LLM that can look at satellite images of, let's say, Walmart parking lots.
Okay.
Across the country, right?
Okay.
By just tracking the number of cars, it can actually get a sense of, how busy those stores are even before Walmart releases like their quarterly earnings report.
So you're saying it's not just about what companies are saying, it's about analyzing the real world.
Exactly.
To kind of like get ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But satellite imagery, to me, that's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
What other kinds of alternative data are we talking about?
Sure, yeah. So satellite imagery, that's great for, tracking certain things like retail activity, but LLMs, they can process information from all over the web. So they can track what products are trending on, like e-commerce sites, analyze online reviews, just to kind of gauge the overall sentiment. They can even, see what people are talking about on social media.
Social media, that's where I go to, argue with strangers about sports.
Yeah.
How does an algorithm even begin to make sense of all of that?
You'd be surprised, actually. It's, it's not about like figuring out your fantasy league or anything, but LLMs, they can look at, millions of posts, tweets, all of that, and start to analyze the sentiment, right? For a particular company or a whole industry even.
Huh.
So like, are people excited about a new product? Or are they worried about maybe, I don't know, supply chain stuff? LLMs can pick up on those trends, and actually give some pretty useful insights.
So it's almost like, it's like a real-time sentiment like barometer.
Yeah.
For the entire market. It's wild. Okay, so we've talked about, news articles, financial reports, all that. But what about something like an earnings call? where, so much of the important information, it's not even written down right. It's the tone of voice,
That's a really good point. Imagine an LLM that's, listened to every earnings call for, I don't know, the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
It's going to start to see some patterns. Maybe a certain CEO always uses a certain phrase or a couple of phrases when things are good, and then, maybe there's some other phrases when things are when they're not looking so good. LLMs can learn to recognize that.
It's like an AI lie detector.
Right.
For earnings calls.
Yeah.
That would save investors a lot of trouble. This is all really fascinating, but I got to ask, with all this power, right? I mean, are there any risks?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's it's not all perfect.
Yeah.
One of the big challenges, that we always have to think about is, well, is the data, right? Is the data that these LLMs are learning from, is it biased?
Okay.
Because if it is, then, the LLM, it might pick up on those biases and, and maybe make decisions or recommendations that aren't really fair.
It's like, yeah, we're basically teaching machines to think here.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is. And another challenge, we call it the black box problem, because these LLMs, I mean, they get really complex really fast, and it can be hard to understand why they made a particular decision.
Right.
So, imagine you get a stock recommendation from an LLM that just seems, totally out of left field.
Yeah.
It might be because it saw something in the data that, all the humans missed, or, maybe it's just maybe it's a coincidence. There's no real connection.
So transparency is going to be really important here, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Investors need to know, at least at a high level, like, how are these things making decisions, especially when it comes to, our money?
Absolutely. And as this tech gets, more popular in the financial world, I think we're going to start seeing, new
Yeah.
rules, new guidelines, just to make sure everything's above board.
Right, right. Okay, so up until now, we've been talking about, big institutions, right, using this kind of tech. But what about everyday investors? What about you and me? Are we going to get left behind as these algorithms just sort of take over?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, right now, building one of these custom LLMs, it takes a lot of resources. You need talented data scientists, tons of data, and computing power that most people, they just don't have access to.
So it seems like we're maybe headed towards this kind of two-tiered system.
Yeah, yeah.
Where the big institutions, the ones with all the money, they have access to these powerful tools, but everyone else is kind of, stuck trying to catch up.
It's a real concern, yeah. But there are some interesting things developing that might actually level the playing field.
Right.
One that I think is really promising is this idea of LL as a service.
LLM as a service. I like the sound of that. What exactly does that mean?
So instead of having to, build your own LLM from scratch, which is a huge undertaking, you'd basically subscribe to a service.
Okay.
That gives you access to one that's already trained
Gotcha.
on a massive amount of data. So it's like having, a whole team of financial analysts at your beck and call, but instead of charging you, a fortune, it's it's a subscription.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. I could, like, subscribe to a service, right, that would give me, I don't know, like sentiment analysis of social media, but like tailored to, I don't know, like my portfolio or like my investments or something.
Exactly. Or let's say you're really interested in, I don't know, renewable energy, right? You could have an LLM analyze like earnings calls, news articles, all of that, looking for anything that might suggest, maybe a policy change is coming or a new technology. The possibilities are really pretty remarkable.
That's wild. It's like democratizing access to, really high level financial analysis.
Yeah.
So, okay, for someone like me, someone who's just kind of like starting to dip their toes into the investing world, what's the takeaway here? Should I be like, looking for funds that use AI? Should I be worried about my own investments? What should I do with all this information?
Those are great questions. And the truth is there's not like a single right answer. I think the most important thing is to educate yourself, right?
Yeah.
The more you understand about how this technology actually works, the good and the bad, the better off you'll be,
Right. Don't just follow the hype. Do your homework. This has been a really fascinating deep dive. We talked about the basics of algorithmic trading, the incredible potential of these custom LLMs, and even some of the ethical, considerations. But but I got to ask, if you had the chance to have a custom LLM, manage your portfolio, would you do it?
That is the $1 million question, and it's one that every investor they're going to have to answer for themselves.
Right.
But it's definitely one worth thinking about as we head into this new world of finance.
Absolutely. And hey, maybe in a future deep dive, we'll revisit this and see where we're at. But until then, keep learning, keep asking those questions.